Good morning, kiddos. Today we are moving on to our last learning target in this unit. So there is a test coming up. Make sure you have your notebook and your notes and you are starting to prepare for that in advance. Our last learning target is that I will learn how to multiply and divide complex numbers. So we did adding and subtracting yesterday. So today we're moving on to multiplying and dividing. So we can go ahead and title our notes. Multiplying / dividing complex numbers. Complex numbers. Oh, that's a horrible S. You know what it's supposed to say. So remember, complex numbers are in the form a plus bi. And to quick recall, something we're going to need to know for this is the rules of I. So remember, I equals the square root of -1. I squared equals -1. I to the third, or it's sometimes called negative I, like we saw in an assignment or two ago. That's equal to the negative square root of -1. Then I to the fourth is equal to 1. We're going to need these today when we're dealing with this, mainly just I squared, but it's good to know all of them, so go ahead and get those written down in your notes. So we're going to first start with multiplication. So we'll start with multiplying, do a few examples of this, and then we will hop on over to division. So example number 1, we're going to have 7 plus 2i times -6 plus 8i. So I'm sure this looks awfully familiar to some other stuff that we have done before with x's. So like x squared, multiplying, you all know how to do that. It's kind of the same process for this. So we're going to be foiling. So remember, first outer, inner, last. Everything in this one has to be multiplied by everything in this one. So we're going to have 7 times -6, it's -42, times 7 times 8i is a positive 56i. 2i times -6 is -12i. And then 2i times 8i is going to give us a positive 16i squared. So we can go ahead and combine our like terms. So we're going to have -42. 56i minus 12i is going to give us -10 is 46. It's going to give us 44i plus 16i squared. But remember, we want this in simplest form. Sorry, trying to find my calculator. Oh, here it is. We want this in simplest form, and I squared is equivalent to -1. So we can go ahead and we can substitute and have -42 plus 44i plus 16 times -1. That's going to give us -42 plus 44i minus 16. And then I can simplify one more time. -42 minus 16 is going to give me -58 plus 44i. And you're always going to want to write it exactly like this with your A first and your B second. So this isn't an unfamiliar process. The only different thing that you all haven't done before is dealing with the i's as well as converting that I squared back into -1. So let's hop on into another example. We're going to have -1 plus 3i, and we're going to have -7 plus 6i. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to be multiplying, so distribute this here and here. -1 times -7 is a positive 7. -1 times 6 is -6i. 3i times -7 is -21i. 3i times 6i is a positive 18i squared. Combine our like terms and go ahead and substitute in for our I squared. We're going to get 7 minus 27i plus 18 times -1. So that's going to give us 7 plus -18. That's going to give us -11. minus 27i. A plus B format, so we are good to go there. And we'll do one more multiplication example before we do a division example. So for multiplication, we are going to have 12 plus 9i times negative 9 minus 3i. Take a second to go ahead and start this one and try it on your own. I'm going to give you a brief minute and then I'll go over it. Okay, hope we've had enough time to get started. So we're going to distribute 12 times negative 9 is negative 108. 12 times negative 3 is going to be negative 36i. 9i minus 9, negative 81i. And then we're going to have negative 27i squared. Combine like terms and simplify our I. Negative 36 minus 81, negative 117 minus 27 times negative 1. And that is going to give us negative 108 plus 27 is negative, oh, I forgot my I right here, negative 81 minus 117i. Excuse me. So this would be your final answer. So multiplication is not too bad. Division's kind of the same thing. There is just a little bit of extra step, and we are pulling. Sorry, I keep hitting the camera if it keeps jiggling. And division's along the same lines, but there are a few extra steps in there. So for division, we'll go ahead and start with example number 1 for division, and we want to divide negative 1 minus 9i over negative 2 minus 9i. So we went to divide these things, and I'm sure somewhere deep down in your gut, you're like, all right, I'm just going to cross off these two things, and it's going to be 1/2. Wrong. All right, don't ever start crossing off things unless you're dealing with multiplication. Here we're dealing with subtraction, so can't do that. That's off the table. What we have to do for dividing complex numbers is we have to think back to what we did a few learning targets ago when we did rationalization, and we talked about conjugates. So as a reminder, a conjugate is essentially the same as our denominator, but instead of a minus sign, it'd be a plus sign, or instead of a plus sign, it'd be a minus sign. When you multiply two conjugates together, you're going to get a whole number. So you'll get a whole real number. So we're trying to get rid of this imaginary number down here in the bottom. So we're going to have to multiply both the top and the bottom by the conjugate form of 1. So it's going to be negative 2 plus 9i. That looks like a cube. That's a 9. And negative 2 plus 9i. So this can get kind of long and it can get kind of messy. So make sure you're giving yourself enough room and you're staying organized. So negative 2 times negative 2 is going to give me 4. Negative 2 times 8i is going to give me negative 18i. Negative 9i times negative 2 is going to give me a positive 18i. And then negative 9i times 9i is going to give me a negative 81i squared. Before we simplify, we'll go ahead and we'll multiply on the top. Negative 1 times negative 2 is 2. Negative 1 times 9i is negative 9i. Negative 9i times negative 2 is a positive 18i. And negative 9i, positive 9i is a negative 81i squared. So remember, it's only going to cancel out what's on the bottom in terms of imaginary. If you still have an I up top, that's perfectly normal and that's fine. So when you're multiplying your denominator, if you don't get i's that cancel out, then you've messed up somewhere. So go back and double check your math. So we're going to have negative 18i plus 18i. Those are going to cancel. I can substitute negative 81. I can substitute the I squared that's attached to my negative 81. So I'll have negative 81 times negative 1. So I'm going to have 4 plus 81, which is going to give me 85 on the bottom. 4 plus 81 is going to give me 85. I'll go ahead and I'll combine like terms and I'll simplify over here. So I can cross that out. I'm going to have negative 81 times negative 1 like I did at the bottom. So negative, and we'll do this first, backtrack. Negative 81 times negative 1 is positive 81. 81 plus 2 is 83. Negative 9i plus 18i, that's going to give me a positive 9i. Okay, so that might have been confusing. Rewind and go listen to that explanation again. And then we have this in fraction form. We're going to want to write it in a plus bi form. So we're going to break this up, and our answer is going to be 83 over 5 plus 9i over 85. If this could simplify down, we'd go ahead and simplify that down further, but it can't for this one. So that's why we leave it. Oh, and it's a good habit to not be like me and make sure you put your I out here to the side. Just that's kind of the more proper mathematically acceptable way to do it. So make sure you put your I out to the side. Division is a little bit more tricky, so we are going to do a few more examples for that one, just to make sure we are all on the same page. So we're going to have negative 18 plus 16i divided by negative 4 plus 10i. So we're going to have to use our conjugate of the bottom. So we're going to multiply both sides by negative 4 minus 10i, negative 4 minus 10i. And we'll go ahead and we'll start multiplying and simplifying. Negative 4 times negative 4, 16. Negative 4 times negative 10i is positive 40i. 10i times negative 4 is negative 40i. 10i times negative 10i is negative 100i squared. Same thing up top. We're going to have negative 18 times negative 4, which is going to give me a positive 72. Negative 18 times negative 10i is going to give me a positive 180i. 16i times negative 4 is going to give me 64i, negative 64i. And then 16i times negative 10i is going to give me negative 160i squared. So then I can go ahead and start simplifying. So on the top, we're going to have 72. 180 minus 64 is going to give me plus 16i. I'm sorry, 116i minus 160 times negative 1. All over, my 40i's are going to cancel out, so I'm going to have 16 minus 100 times negative 1 when I replace your negative 1 for that I squared. Then this is going to give me, let's see, 72 plus 160 is going to give me 232 plus 116i. And then on the bottom here, I'm going to have negative 100 times 1 is positive 100. Positive 100 plus 16 is 116. Then lastly, remember I have to split it up into a plus bi format. Oops, excuse me. So we're going to split it and we're going to have 232 over 116 plus 116 over 116i. And then we look to see if we can simplify it any further. 232 divided by 116 is simplifiable, and that's going to give us 2. 116 divided by 116, that's going to give us 1. So we're just left over with I. Okay, so this is a rather lengthy process, but it's nothing you all have not done before. It's just building on stuff you learned in our prior learning targets. All right, let's go ahead and we will do one more example together, and then I'll have you try one on your own. We're going to have negative 17 minus I over negative 9 plus 8i. First step, multiply by the conjugate of the bottom. Negative 9 minus 8i, negative 9 minus 8i. Go ahead and start distributing. Negative 9 times negative 9, 81. This is going to give us positive 72i, negative 72i, and then negative 64i squared. Same thing up here. We're going to get those two multiplied. It's going to give us 153. then we're going to have 136i, and you multiply these two, we're going to have a positive 9i, and then we're going to have a positive 8i squared. Go ahead and start simplifying. Those are going to cancel. We're going to get 153 plus 145i plus 8 times negative 1 over 81 minus 64 times negative 1. Simplify one more time. We're going to get 153 minus 8. We're going to get 145 plus 145i. On the bottom, we're going to get 145. All right, that works out. That means we're going to get stuff that cancels. So we're going to rewrite that as 145 over 145 plus 145i over 145. Not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but the reason we can break this up like this is because you all know if we have to add fractions, you have to have common denominators. So we have a common denominator here, so we're just essentially breaking that back up. And those are going to cancel and give us 1 for both, so 1 plus I. All right, last example. I want you to take a second to try it on your own, and then I shall reveal the answer. I'm going to have 4 plus 3i over negative 10 plus I. Take a second to try that one out. Okay, your first step is you're going to multiply by the conjugate, so it's going to be negative 10 minus I, negative 10 minus I. You're going to distribute all that out to your simplification, and you should end up with your answer of negative 37 over 101 minus 34 over 101 I. So if you didn't get this, go back and double check your math. You might have misadded or mismultiplied somewhere. Make sure your simplification is correct. Go back and double check your notes. As always, if you're still struggling, please reach out to me, reach out to a peer, look at the examples on Delta Math, watch the Delta Math help video. There's endless resources out there, so just make sure you are putting in that extra effort. But as always, bring your questions to class next time I see you. We'll take some time to go over it and answer any questions or do some more examples together. But I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye. Be productive today.